1 minute ago, Prince's secret recording just shattered Diddy's trial. You won't believe what just dropped. 1 minute ago, everything changed. A secret audio recording from the late music legend Prince has just been released, and it's already sending shockwaves through the courtroom in the ongoing trial of Sean Diddy Combs. But this isn't just another courtroom update. No. This is a bombshell so explosive that it's got fans, journalists, and even seasoned legal analysts questioning if Diddy's empire is finally about to crumble for good. It started as just another tense day in federal court. Cameras outside, lawyers pacing. Diddy, as usual, walked in wearing his signature designer shades and a custom three-piece suit, exuding confidence. But within minutes, that confidence turned to chaos. The prosecution stunned everyone by announcing that they were about to play an unheard private recording made by Prince, weeks before his mysterious death. And when they hit play, the room froze. Prince's voice echoed from the speakers, calm, measured, haunting. If you're hearing this, then something happened to me. That single sentence changed everything. What followed wasn't just a message. It was a confession, a warning, and a takedown, all rolled into one. In the next 10 minutes, Prince named names, revealed locations, described intimate encounters, and dropped details that no outsider could have possibly known. Unless they had been deep inside the inner circle, and when Diddy realized what was happening, he lost it. Like, completely lost it. He stood up, pointed at the speakers, and shouted across the courtroom, "This is fake! He's lying! He's dead!" Security rushed in. The judge slammed his gavel so hard a juror flinched. But the damage was done. Fans are already flooding social media with reactions like, "Prince knew too much," and "If that tape's real, Diddy is done." Some are calling it the most dramatic moment in modern music history, and it's only getting started. So what exactly did Prince say? Why was this tape hidden until now? And could this be the moment that finally brings down one of the most powerful figures in hip-hop? Buckle up, because this isn't just scandal, this is war. The second the audio began playing, the entire courtroom seemed to stop breathing. Prince's voice, low, tired, yet crystal clear, washed over the crowd like a cold wave. "If you're hearing this, then something happened to me," he said. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had only just begun to rage. Diddy, seated at the defense table, leaned back slightly, his confident posture faltering. His hands gripped the edge of the table as if to anchor himself to reality. For a man used to controlling every narrative, every camera angle, every headline, this was his nightmare playing out in real time. And it was only beginning. Prince spoke of lavish parties in Miami, in the Hollywood Hills, in ultra-exclusive corners of New York that only the top 0.01% had access to. But what he described wasn't champagne toasts and red carpets. "It started out normal," he said, "but then it always shifted. Once the doors closed and the cameras turned off, it became something else, something darker." The courtroom was utterly silent except for the recording. Prince's voice cracked slightly as he recounted what he had seen. Young musicians, many barely of age, being isolated, encouraged to loosen up, handed drinks they didn't order, pills they didn't ask for, rooms with no windows, security, stationed everywhere, except inside. Diddy's face turned to stone. His usual calm had been replaced with something unreadable, but his eyes, darting back and forth between his attorneys and the floor, betrayed his mind racing in panic. He hadn't seen this coming. Not like this. His legal team whispered among themselves furiously, but even they seemed rattled. How had the prosecution gotten this recording? Why now? Why today? Then Prince said it. The sentence that would be repeated on every blog, every tweet, every late-night panel for weeks to come. These weren't just parties. They were traps. At that moment, Diddy whispered something to his lawyer, barely audible, but a courtroom reporter later confirmed it. He wasn't supposed to say that. As if responding from the grave, Prince continued, "I told him, I warned him. I said, this will all catch up to you." And he laughed. He told me I didn't have the power to touch him, that no one did, that everyone who tried would be dealt with. Gasps spread across the room. A woman in the gallery audibly said, "Oh my God." The judge didn't even shush her. He was locked in, just like the rest of them. And Diddy? Diddy was unraveling. His fingers tapped anxiously. He glanced toward the doors as if looking for a way out. He mouthed something again. this time more, aggressively. "This is bullshit." But he didn't speak aloud. "Not yet." Prince continued, shifting from narrative into warning. "I've seen the footage, I've seen the contracts. I know where the bodies are buried. And I mean that metaphorically. I hope." The room didn't know whether to gasp or laugh. Some did both. A juror wiped their eyes. The courtroom sketch artist's pencil trembled on the paper. And then came a name. Cassie. "She wasn't the only one," Prince said quietly. "But she was the first to tell me what really happened to her. She said she tried to leave. And when she did, everything started to vanish. Her bookings, her team, even her closest friends." Prince explained that he had kept records, hard drives, photos, receipts. "If you're hearing this and something's happened to me," he said again, "you'll find the files. I made sure of it." Diddy flinched visibly when Prince mentioned the files. The prosecutor paused the tape. "Your Honor," he said carefully, "we would like to enter the accompanying hard drive contents into evidence as Exhibit 72. Chaos followed. Diddy's lawyers leapt from their seats. "Objection! Relevance! Foundation! Chain of verb! Custody!" But the judge, still visibly shaken by what he'd just heard, overruled them. "The tape continues," he said simply, and it did. The next moment in the recording was like something out of a movie. Prince recounted a night in 2016, a Grammys after party, where he claimed he finally confronted Diddy. "I said, 'You can't keep doing this.' And he leaned in and said, 'You might be Prince, but I own this game. People like you don't change it. They get erased.'" At that, Diddy snapped. He stood up so violently his chair skidded backward. "This is a fucking lie!" he screamed. The judge banged his gavel. Security rushed toward him. "Sit down, Mr. Combs. Sit down." Diddy's face was flushed, veins bulging, chest heaving. "He's dead. He can't talk. That's not even his voice," he yelled. But no one was listening to him anymore. Everyone was listening to the voice of the man who was no longer here, a man whose legacy was untouched by scandal, a man whose music the world still trusted, a man who, in death, had delivered what could be the final blow to one of the most powerful moguls in music history. After several minutes, the judge called a recess. Diddy's lawyers huddled, furious, desperate. He was ushered out of the courtroom by security, muttering angrily. But the damage was already done. The press outside had caught wind of the recording. Headlines were already breaking. Prince's voice heard in courtroom. Secret recording threatens Diddy's defense. Audio bombshell just changed the game. Fans were torn. Some couldn't believe it. Others had suspected for years that something darker lurked beneath Diddy's polished image. "Prince never lied," one fan tweeted. "If he said it, I believe it." Another wrote, "If that was really Prince's voice, Diddy's finished." But what most people didn't know was that the tape wasn't even finished yet. Court reconvened 30 minutes later. Diddy didn't look the same. Gone was the bold, untouchable figure. He slouched in his seat. His tie was loosened. He didn't look like a mogul. He looked like a man afraid of what might come next. The judge nodded to the prosecution. "You may resume playback." The next section of the recording was quieter, sadder. "There's a culture of fear," Prince said. "No one speaks because they've seen what happens to the ones who do." He paused. "I've seen them disappear. Not physically, but musically, socially. They vanish." Prince detailed one particular case, a rising R&B artist who, after refusing Diddy's advances, was suddenly blackballed. Her song stopped charting. Her studio time vanished. She said she got a letter, no name, just typed, telling her to shut her mouth. At that, a woman in the audience burst into tears. The judge allowed the recording to continue. Prince mentioned more names. Not all were public. Some were code names. But prosecutors later revealed they had already matched them to real people, some of whom were now expected to testify in the coming weeks. Diddy didn't react this time. He just sat there, eyes glassy, like a man realizing he was losing a game he didn't know he was playing. But the next twist would hit even harder. And it was just seconds away, but the next twist would hit even harder. And it was just seconds away. Prince's voice returned, lower now, more burdened. Like each word carried the weight of secrets he had held for far too long. "I never wanted to be part of this," he said. "I just wanted to make music. But when I saw what was happening, how people were being used, broken, discarded, I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. The courtroom felt colder. 1. Juror crossed their arms and leaned back, visibly disturbed. A few members of the press sat frozen, pens hovering midair. Even the bailiffs, stoic, motionless figures of authority, could be seen stealing glances at the speakers. Then came the shock. In 2015, I saw something I was never supposed to see, Prince said. There was a room, a private room. No cameras, no security, just a few people, high up, powerful. I won't say everything I saw, but I will say this. The people in that room weren't just partying. They were planning, coordinating, choosing who would rise and who would fall. At that, murmurs erupted. The judge instructed silence, but the tension could not be contained. Diddy's attorney leaned into him and whispered rapidly, but Diddy didn't respond. His hands were clasped together, lips moving slightly. Some said he was praying, others believed he was reciting lines he'd prepared in case something like this ever came out. Then, Prince dropped another name, a big one, a chart-topping, Grammy-winning collaborator of Diddy's. He was there too, Prince said. I asked him later, "Why didn't you stop it?" He said, "Because I didn't want to lose everything." Gasps again. That name hadn't been mentioned in any previous filings. Fans online exploded. Within minutes, Prince knew was trending. Tweets flooded in. This is bigger than Diddy. The industry's being exposed in real time. And if Prince gave names, it's over for all of them. Back inside the courtroom, Diddy looked shattered. He wasn't even pretending anymore. His once impenetrable image was unraveling. One reporter later wrote, "It was like watching a marble statue crack under invisible pressure." Prince then spoke of the list. He claimed that sometime in 2016, he had gotten access to a list, handwritten, signed only with a single initial. A list of names, musicians, producers, influencers, people who were, in his words, indoctrinated, silenced, or removed. I didn't believe it at first, Prince admitted, but then I started noticing things. That singer who vanished after her tour, she was on the list. That producer who OD'd under strange circumstances, on the list. That rapper who suddenly lost his label deal after one comment, him too. The prosecution paused the tape at this point, introducing into evidence a printed document labeled Exhibit 73. They claimed it was the list. Diddy's attorneys exploded in objection. Forgery, hearsay, no foundation. But the judge was stone-faced. He allowed the jury to see a redacted copy. What wasn't redacted were the initials at the bottom, S.C. Sean Combs. The gallery stirred. You could hear someone gasp. He wrote it himself. Diddy slammed his fist onto the table, causing the microphones to rattle. "This is fake! It's all fake!" he shouted. The judge glared at him, voice booming across the chamber. "One more outburst and I will have you removed." But Diddy wasn't the only one reacting. Out in the hallway, people gathered by the dozens, straining to hear through the doors. Inside, the gallery, friends of the music mogul sat frozen. A few lowered their heads. One walked out. Some fans watching the live feed cried. Others cheered, but all were glued to the unfolding disaster. Then, in the next segment of the tape, Prince's tone shifted again, this time filled with regret. "I should have come forward sooner," he said. "But I was scared. I saw what happened to those who tried. I wasn't strong enough then. Maybe I'm still not. But if you're hearing this, then I'm already gone. And I need you to know the truth." He spoke about conversations he had with Cassie Ventura. "She wasn't just a victim," he said. "She was a fighter. She told me stories that made me want to burn the whole system down." He said she tried to leave twice. Both times, things got worse. "She once told me, 'I feel like I'm already dead.' I never forgot that." Diddy looked like he wanted to vanish into the floor. And Prince wasn't done. "I once tried to confront him directly," he continued. "I showed him an email, proof that someone in his team had paid off a witness. He looked at me and said, 'You think I don't know what you're doing? You think anyone's going to believe you over me?' And he laughed. He actually laughed. At that point, Diddy's mother, seated quietly in the third row, covered her face with her hands. Family members looked at one another, unsure whether to stay or walk out. A cousin stood up, hesitated, then sat back down. The family was divided. The legacy was bleeding. The judge paused the playback once more, allowing the courtroom to regain composure. But there was little left to compose. The prosecution had planned this perfectly. The tape didn't just damage Diddy's image, it demolished it. When the recording resumed, Prince spoke about his final meetings with two major label executives. "They told me to back off," he said. "They said I was risking too much, that I'd lose my royalties, my catalog, my protection." One of them even said, "Do you want to end up like MJ?" That line sent a collective chill through the courtroom. Then came a particularly heartbreaking moment. Prince said, "Music used to be a sanctuary. Now it's a machine that eats people, chews them up, and spits out whatever the world will buy. I wanted to change that, but I was too late." The tape clicked off momentarily, just long enough for the courtroom to exhale before clicking back on. "One last thing," Prince added, almost whispering. "This goes beyond just one man. Diddy wasn't alone. He had help. And if you dig deep enough, you'll find them." That was where part 2 of the playback ended. Diddy didn't move. He just sat there, motionless, like he had been turned to stone. A member of the court staff whispered to a marshal, who nodded solemnly. A reporter would later describe the scene as eerie, like watching the final scene of a Shakespearean tragedy. Outside the courthouse, the crowd had doubled in size. Protesters, fans, conspiracy theorists, all of them chanting different things but united in one thing. This trial had just exploded into something far bigger than anyone imagined. And the recording still wasn't over. The judge leaned forward and addressed the court. "We will resume the next segment of this audio after a brief recess. Counsel, be ready." Everyone knew what that meant. The next part of Prince's recording was going to name more names. When the courtroom reconvened after the break, the energy had changed again. It wasn't just tense now, it was haunted. Diddy returned to the room looking like a shadow of himself. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes were glassy, his hands trembled slightly as he sat back down. A member of his legal team handed him a cold bottle of water. He didn't touch it. The judge gave a nod to the prosecution. "Continue." The speakers crackled and Prince's voice returned. "You've probably heard of the names I'm about to say," he began, "but I doubt you've heard what they've really done." He let the silence hang for a moment before listing 3 industry titans, names known worldwide, names often seen with Diddy at award shows, charity galas, and high-profile music deals. "I watched them sit in a room and decide who the next artist would be. They picked them like lottery numbers, not based on talent, but based on who was willing to play the game. And the ones who didn't, they disappeared." There was an audible gasp from someone in the back row. One juror visibly shifted in their seat. The court reporter's fingers slowed on the keys, hesitating as if to process what she was hearing, before continuing. "And if you think this is just about one man," Prince said, "you're wrong. Diddy was a gatekeeper, but there were others, handlers, agents, publicists, people who made sure the system stayed intact. Some got paid. Others just liked the power." One of the names mentioned caused Diddy's defense attorney to physically flinch. The judge immediately issued a gag order, preventing that portion from being repeated in open court or press, but the damage was done. Those who heard it would never forget it. "Diddy told me once," Prince continued, "that the only real power in the music industry is silence. Silence keeps the money moving," he said, "and noise kills careers." He believed that. He built an empire on that. Diddy sat completely still, but his jaw was clenched so tightly a vein had risen in his temple. He wasn't listening anymore. He was enduring. Then the tone of the recording shifted again. Prince began talking about personal betrayals, not just within the industry, but within friendships. "There was one time," Prince said, "I confided in someone close, someone I thought was different. I told him I was thinking of exposing what I'd seen. Within days, my phone was tapped. My house was broken into. Nothing was stolen, but drawers were opened, discs were moved. Someone wanted me to know they'd been there. The entire courtroom was silent. You could hear every breath, every chair. Creak, I never trusted that friend again," Prince said softly. "He still smiles at me at events, still posts tributes online, but I know what he did. It was the kind of sentence that made everyone look around the room suspiciously. Eyes darted from one figure to another. Was that person here? Were they watching this unfold? And then came a story that shook even the most hardened courtroom veterans. Prince described an incident in early 2016, one that had never been made public. There was a party in the desert, he said. Private invite only. You had to give your phone to security at the gate. Diddy was there. So were others. But one guest, she didn't make it out the same. He described a young female artist, new to the scene, talented, star potential. She called me the next day, sobbing, he said. Said she'd been drugged, said she couldn't remember what happened. Just flashes, a camera, a room, laughter. The courtroom froze. She said she wanted to go to the police. I told her I'd support her. But 3 days later, she disappeared. Her social media was wiped, her phone disconnected, her label dropped her. To this day, that artist's whereabouts remain unknown. The tape continued. I looked for her, Prince said, hired someone. We never found her. I still don't know what happened. A woman in the gallery let out a muffled sob. Diddy turned toward the floor. His eyes closed. A single tear slid down his face. But it wasn't sorrow. It was the terror of being exposed by a ghost who would never stop talking. Then, Prince returned to his recordings. I backed everything up, he said. 3 drives, hidden in different places. If this gets played in court, it means someone found them. Good, because there's more. Much more. The prosecutor paused the tape briefly to submit into evidence photographs of a safe deposit box registered under Prince's name. Inside, a small flash drive labeled, "If I disappear." The jury stared at the screen as the image was shown. One juror covered their mouth. Another leaned forward, eyes wide. There was no need for dialogue. Everyone understood what this meant. Prince had left a trail, and Diddy had walked right into it. Then came another story, one no one had heard before. There was a meeting in LA, Prince said. A producer I respected invited me, said it was just a dinner. But it wasn't. It was a vetting session. They wanted to know if I'd fall in line. He said there were 8 men in that room, most of them high-ranking music executives. One of them asked me if I believed in protection. I said, "What do you mean?" He smiled and said, "Protection from stories, from lawsuits, from people who talk too much." That's when I knew. It wasn't about music, it was about power. Prince said he left early, said he never talked about that dinner until the day he recorded the tape, and then he mentioned the unthinkable. "There are tapes?" he said. "I don't know how many, but I've heard whispers. Hidden cameras and speakers and light fixtures, footage that's never supposed to see the light of day." Diddy used to call it insurance. Others called it blackmail. Diddy flinched. He whispered something to his lawyer, this time with urgency. The attorney stood up and requested a sidebar, but the judge shook his head. "Sit down. Let it play." Prince's voice was steady now. "I know this is dangerous. I know this might get buried. But if someone's hearing this, I beg you, don't let them bury it. Too many people have been hurt." The room was speechless. Even the court officers were visibly shaken. Then, almost casually, Prince added, "One of the people who helped me make this tape is probably in the courtroom right now." Everyone looked around. One juror gasped. The prosecution glanced at their second table. The defense team turned in unison. Was it a bluff, or was someone hiding in plain sight? Diddy sat upright, eyes wide, panic now fully visible. Because if Prince had an ally in the room, then this wasn't just a posthumous confession. This was a setup, and Diddy had walked right into it. The judge looked at the clock. "We'll break for the day," he said. "The remainder of the recording will be played tomorrow morning." But no one moved. Everyone just sat there, stunned, rattled, trying to absorb what they had just heard, trying to figure out what had been real and what was still coming. And Diddy? He finally spoke. "I need to talk to my team. Alone." But it was too late, because by now, half the country had already heard what Prince had to say. And the other half, they were waiting for the next bomb to drop, and the other half, they were waiting for the next bomb to drop. The following morning, the courthouse was surrounded by media vans, helicopters circling overhead, and protesters from both sides chanting outside the barricades. Some held signs that read, "Justice for the silenced." Others defiantly chanted Diddy's name. But inside the courtroom, There was no chanting, only the low, tense hum of people bracing for the storm's final wave. When Diddy walked in that day, something was different. He wasn't flanked by the full army of attorneys, just two. His tie was gone, his collar was open, the polished mogul had been stripped down to something more raw, more cornered. He kept his head down, refusing to meet the eyes of the crowd, the judge, or even the jury, and then the judge gave the nod. Proceed with the final segment of the audio. Prince's voice came through one last time, calmer than ever. But that calm wasn't peace. It was resignation. "There's one more thing I need you to know," he said. "Something I never told anyone. Not my lawyers, not my family, not my label." He paused. "Diddy told me something once, something I've never repeated. Until now." The courtroom collectively leaned in. He told me that all of this, the parties, the NDAs, the pills, the footage, wasn't about pleasure. It was about power. That he wanted to own people, not just sign them, that if he couldn't control them, he'd destroy them. And the system let him do it. Over and over again. Gasps. Audible crying. Even the judge looked shaken. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Prince said, "He told me, 'You're lucky I like you, because if I didn't, you'd already be gone.'" You could hear a pin drop. "I knew then," Prince continued, "that I was in danger, but I didn't run. I watched, I listened, and I recorded." The courtroom went from tense to traumatized. The prosecution paused the recording briefly to display one final piece of evidence, an email chain between Prince's legal team and an encrypted third-party storage service dated just 1 week before his death. The subject line? Failsafe. Protocol. The attachment? A zip file labeled silenced. At that, Diddy stood. Not angrily this time, quietly, almost with resolve. He whispered to his lawyer. His lawyer nodded and stood. "Your Honor," he said, "the defendant would like to request a short recess to consider his legal position." The judge narrowed his eyes. "Are you requesting to change your plea?" "No, Your Honor," the lawyer replied. "Not yet, but we're no longer proceeding as if this case is winnable." The courtroom lost it. Reporters ran out the door to break the news. Jurors' eyes widened. One clutched their chest. And Diddy? He sat back down and buried his face in his hands. But Prince wasn't finished. The tape resumed. "I want the world to remember something," Prince said. "This isn't about revenge. This isn't even about justice. This is about truth. Because for too long, truth has been currency in the wrong hands." He took a breath. "Diddy told me once, you can control anyone if you give them what they want or take away what they need. That's the game. And it's time for someone to burn the game board." Prince's final minutes on tape were personal, reflective, haunting. "I've seen good people get destroyed, people I loved. I wasn't brave enough to stop it when I was alive. But maybe I can stop it now. Or at least slow it down." He paused. "If anything happens to me, tell my fans I'm sorry. Not for the music, not for the fame, but for waiting too long to speak." And then silence. Not static, not a fade out. Just a hard stop. The audio file ended. No one in the room spoke. Even the judge sat motionless. A full minute passed before he finally whispered, "Let the record show the audio has concluded." And that was it. Or so everyone thought. Until the prosecution revealed. The last twist. "Your Honor," the lead attorney said, "we would like to submit one final exhibit. Footage recovered from a backup storage cloud linked to Prince's estate. It contains a video file we believe corroborates a portion of his testimony." The judge blinked in surprise. "You have a video?" "We do." They wheeled out a monitor, dimmed the lights, and played the file. What appeared on screen was grainy, time-stamped, but unmistakably real. A home surveillance camera, likely hidden in a speaker or light fixture, capturing a room full of people, music industry elites. And in the center of the frame, unmistakably, Diddy, laughing, holding court, surrounded by wide-eyed young musicians. The audio was low but clear enough. "You're in now," Diddy said. "No going back." Another man laughed nervously. "And if we don't want in?" Diddy leaned forward. "Then you're out. All the way out." The screen went black. Gasps. Murmurs. Even the judge's hand trembled as he reached for his gavel. "I believe we've heard enough for today," he said. But no one moved. The silence that followed wasn't about order. It was about shock. About the understanding that this wasn't just a trial anymore. It was a reckoning. And Diddy? He didn't protest. He didn't cry. He just nodded, because deep down, he knew. This was the end. Outside, chaos erupted. News crews went live. Social media melted down. Hashtags like "Ton Prince told the truth," "Diddy exposed," and "I silenced no more" exploded across every platform. Artists who had once stood by Diddy began quietly deleting photos. Labels released statements of shock and concern. Lawyers were contacted. NDAs were reviewed. A machine once powered by silence was now drowning in noise. And the fans? They were torn between heartbreak and validation. One tweet read, "I grew up on his music, but now I can't unhear Prince." Another, "This isn't just about Diddy, it's about an entire system that's been broken for decades." Back in the courtroom, the judge scheduled a new hearing for the following week. But everyone knew where this was going. No amount of cross-examination could erase what had been said or what had been seen. Prince had spoken, and his words didn't just rattle the courtroom. They cracked the foundations of the entire industry. As the gallery emptied, someone whispered, "This changes everything." And for once, they weren't being dramatic. They were just telling the truth.